What are we gonna do when we get back?
What are we gonna do when we get back?
I take a shower and hit the rack.
Take a shower and hit the rack.
Welcome to Charlie Mike. If you're a combat veteran with an entrepreneurial bug and want to know what highly successful combat veteranpreneurs are doing to transform their sacrifice and experience to create their visual reality, then this is dedicated to your inspiring and fulfilling future. And now your host, Duane Peril.
No way, gotta run, beat, lots of fun.
Invest in Yourself ebook is my free gift to you for listening to the show and becoming part of the CO Nation. To receive your free gift, please go to landmarklifecoaching.com. Thank you for joining us on this episode. There are so many veterans with the core strengths to become successful entrepreneurs and continue to make a huge positive impact on our country. Here we highlight the amazing successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Combat veterans for the purpose of this show are soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen who have served the United States in wars, campaigns, and in theater on foreign soil or hostile waters. Our guest today is Duane France. Duane is currently serving as the Director of Veteran Services at the Family Care Center, a private mental health counseling agency specializing in the unique needs of military service members, veterans, and their families. He is also the Executive Director of the Colorado Veterans Health and Wellness Agency, a 501c3 nonprofit affiliated with the Family Care Center. Mr. France is a retired Army non-commissioned officer and combat veteran, having served in deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, North Africa, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. After retirement, he served as program director for the Colorado Veterans Resource. In 2015, Mr. France was selected as one of 5 military scholars in the nation by the National Board of Certified Counselors Foundation, and in 2016 was selected as the awardee of the 2016 National Board of Certified Counselors Foundation Capacity Building Grant, providing no-cost clinical mental health counseling to veterans in and around El Paso County, Colorado. He also writes for an audience of veterans, their families, and those who support veterans on his website, www.veteranmentalhealth.com. Mr. France is passionate about veteran mental health and feels strongly that those who have served in the military can continue to provide value to their community long after that service has ended. All right, Duane, thank you and welcome welcome to the show, and thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Duane. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you tell our loyal listeners all about your journey from a combat veteran to a successful entrepreneur. But before we get into your entrepreneurial experience, can you give our audience an overview of your military experience?
Yeah, so I enlisted probably, it wasn't even 2 weeks after graduation in 92. And actually started out in the Army Reserves, thought that maybe trying to go to college would be a good thing. So tried that, didn't work out. Spent less than a year, right about a year in the reserves and went active duty. And my first duty station was in Germany. And then I was at Bragg for 3 years, jumping out of airplanes in the 82nd. Then Germany again with my family, and I was in Germany on 9/11. And right when I was planning on trying to get to Fort Campbell, which is where my family, sort of halfway between where my wife's family and my family was, the Army in its infinite wisdom decided that since I wanted to volunteer for stuff, they sent me on recruiting duty. So I was a recruiter outside of Fort Meade for 3 years, and then my family and I came here to Fort Carson, Colorado in 2006. And I like to say they've been here since 2006 because that's when I did 15 months in Iraq in 06-07, 12-month tour in Afghanistan in 2009, 2010. Another Afghanistan tour, 11-12, in the capital there for about 9 months, and then finished out my career with the support element of the 10th Special Forces Group, went to North Africa then at the end. So yeah, lots of it's a little embarrassing to condense 22 years into about 5 minutes worth of highlights.
Yeah. So what was your duties while you were in as far as career? What field did you serve in?
So I was in logistics, and that was the interesting thing. When I went to enlist the first time, there's no such thing as combat arms in the Army Reserves. And when I went to join, they said, "Oh, look at all these nice things that you could do, but these are the only things that you have available." And I think it was motor transport operator, truck driver was there, and laundry and bath specialist, and a bunch of other stuff. And not a bunch of other stuff, I should say. So I was looking for the thing that got me out the quickest and gave me a little bit of bonus money. So I enlisted as a truck driver. Then when I came back active duty, I told the recruiter, I said, "I'll do anything." I said, I'll take whatever you've got. And he said, "Well, what we have for you is truck driver, and that's your choice." Basically my choice was, he said, "Oh, you could be a truck driver in Texas, you can be a truck driver in Germany," when I went active duty, and that's kind of where I went. See, I was in logistics for the majority of, or all of my career, but it's really kind of a different MOS. Obviously, at the military occupational specialty, at the early stages, it is driving and transporting, taking stuff from one place to the other. But as you kind of grow into the field, there's a lot more leadership, a lot more planning and moving things around. So when I was in Iraq, I was what we call a truck master, company operations. I was a commander's advisor for moving vehicles around and kind of solving all the problems of who, where, and how much. But then in Afghanistan, we were in charge of security escort, and that was one of the biggest things for most motor transport and logistics folks, especially in kind of the mid years in Iraq and Afghanistan. They ended up doing a lot more gun trucks and convoy escorts. So definitely where we were at in Afghanistan in 9/12 was much more kinetic and a little bit chippy with our deployments.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison you made, because that's one of the premises of this podcast is, with combat veterans and, veterans that were in, different forward deployed areas like that. A typical, like you gave as an example, logistics position of driving means something stateside or even in a non-combat zone. But when you're in a combat zone, logistics isn't quite as simple from just basic understanding of what somebody does. You really are in harm's way. You are really, putting yourself out there to help move things from point A to point B and provide the services that are needed in those situations, which takes you to another level of understanding and learning core strengths and skills that can later help you as an entrepreneur. So it's interesting, that comparison. So that's great to get that out there, because you don't always do the same thing from one place to another without generalizing somebody's role. And so I know I've experienced that myself with the tour that I did over in Saudi. I went over. I was a desk guy in the Air Force, right? And so I went over, and I'm all of a sudden find myself working in an operation and maintenance unit where they basically are responsible for electrical, plumbing, air conditioning, you name it. And so I'm like hands-on for a year, learning all these trades to be a contributor to the mission. I didn't even have a desk. So, that was quite a difference in what you do, but I'm very flexible in that. And I love the ability to learn new things anyway. And so, yeah, that's a great point that you brought up with that. So as you got out, did you go, when you transitioned out of the military, did you say, "Oh, I'm going to go out and get just look for a job," or did you kind of know as you were transitioning out that you wanted to be more entrepreneurial or even so veteran-based?
No, I never really planned on going into logistics, and I didn't go into logistics after I retired. Excuse me. When I came back from Iraq in 07, early 08, I really decided that I wanted to do something other than logistics. I still had probably about another 5 years. I didn't retire until 2014. And I decided that I wanted to work with veterans and I wanted to support them. So I ended up pursuing a career in clinical mental health counseling.
Yeah, that, now, I knew your background, from prior conversations, and I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn, which is amazing, the articles you write and the quantity of articles that you write that are just solid. And so, how did your training transpire, I guess? Because if you were trained logistics and you got out and went into the mental health field, did you get out and get a degree, or did you already have a degree in this?
No, so that's something that, especially if people are listening to this on active duty, you can excuse me, you can do this kind of stuff even without getting out and getting a degree. I did all of my associates, all of my undergrad work, and a good portion of my master's degree while I was still on active duty. So to be a licensed clinical mental health counselor, you need to have a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, licensed social worker, licensed marriage and family therapy. And so usually it's probably about a 2.5, 3 years master's degree, but I was able to start it early enough in my transition, like I said, to get it started off with an associate's, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, kind of solidified it when I transferred to my bachelor's, got a post-bachelor certificate, and then started my master's program, again, all while I was in active duty. And this is something that if you want it, and if you feel like you know what you want to do, then go for it. I was actually taking a couple of 400 level classes while I was in Afghanistan, which was not very fun, because we were outside the wire pretty much. We would come in, we'd have a down day, and we would go back out the next day. And on my down days, I was sitting there trying to figure out how to write, 14-page neuropsychology papers and, systems and theory and history of mental health. So yeah, it was definitely interesting. I've had when we were in North Africa, I was taking a couple of master's level courses, and a lot of it has to do with you got to find the right program, and you got to find something that meets the requirements. But yeah, so then it was about 6 months. I lined it up so much that about 6 months after I retired, I graduated with my master's degree.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's some really good information, because that's one thing that military service members, as they're even contemplating separating from the military, that they take the time and plan as far in advance. I was talking to an individual today who had separated a couple of years ago, and he said he literally spent a greater part of 3 years before he was getting out, making sure he had his education stuff lined up, that he really had looked into the field that he was interested in going into, because like you, it wasn't what he was doing while he was in, so he had to build those credentials, make sure he understood the field, and as he was transitioning, also, it translates into being able to make sure you're properly compensated and you understand what that level really means. And so that's great for our listeners to hear, because that is so key when people are transitioning, that they do plan ahead, because it's hard when you get out and you're trying to establish your path forward, and one of the major things you need to do is accomplish those educational goals. So that's great. So you took that degree, and did you go straight to the nonprofit, or you worked in the family care center first before you became part of the nonprofit?
No, I actually was not working in the mental health counseling field. It's like you said, you need to bridge that gap, and I actually had the opportunity to work. I honestly didn't think that I was going to get into nonprofit work before I am. But as I was transitioning, and this has a lot to do with networking, I was doing some volunteering in the community. And while I was working with this volunteer group, we were in a meeting, and someone had mentioned, hey, there's this other program who's looking for a program director. And this was the Colorado Veterans Resource Coalition. And essentially what they do is they provided housing for homeless veterans. So the job description was sort of like, hey, we're looking for somebody that knows how to run the barracks like a first sergeant, which was where I kind of had some experience there. So I started out there, and I was there for about 18 months, and it was also working as a program director in the nonprofit field. And it was a great program, and it was a great experience. Had a lot of, it was an established program when I was there. It had been around for about 10 years. And I got a lot of experience working in the nonprofit field, but I was also able to work directly one-on-ones in supporting veterans. And as I kind of closed out on my degree, it turned out to be a little something different than what I was wanting to do. Not that it was a bad place, but it was a lot more like social work. Whereas I wanted to be a mental health counselor a lot. So social work is a lot more broad-based, connecting to community resources. As you guys, clinical social work is like therapy, but social work is much broader than that. And that's not what I went to school for. And talked it over with the executive director, and we both agreed that I would stay on to kind of find somebody that would, carry my mission forward. So then I could go into clinical mental health counseling full time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a very complex path with, being able to navigate that. But it's a great example to show that you gotta kind of move through those processes and those changes to get to that position that really fulfills you and is exactly what you're, intending and preparing to do. So let me ask you, based on your combat military experience, what core strengths do you feel have served you best in being able to make this transition and be entrepreneurial in the nonprofit sector?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with personal awareness and sort of understanding that the strengths that we had in the military are able to be translated into the post-military life. I mean, this is a lot of people think that it's black and white, it's one and the other, but it's not really. And there's a lot of different things that we can carry over. So maybe I'm not a truck driver in the civilian world, but I can be a mentor. I could be a leader. All of those things, that the leadership aspect of what we did when we were in the military is very translatable to what we do afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great point, because a lot of veterans, as they transition, they get tripped up on, I need to translate these technical skills, where, when I coach veterans through my coaching practice, I really like to get them to focus on these core strengths that they've spent sometimes many years developing in the military that are absolutely of a high value to any corporation. And if you can really understand those core strengths that you've developed and translate those into how you can add value to somebody's business, to a particular position, to an industry, whatever it is, your hiring managers are really going to stand up and notice that, because they'll be able to do a well enough assessment to know whether you're technically qualified. And sometimes that's not even what they're looking for, because some jobs, some industries, it's like, we want the people with the right character, the people that we can count on, the people that are adaptable and have perseverance and all those great core strengths that a veteran develops and can display, because that's not always common in the civilian sector. And so, being able to take advantage of those are of great importance to veterans as they transition, and especially if you're going to become an entrepreneur. Those core strengths that you developed in the military are exactly what's going to carry you through the ups and downs and the craziness of being an entrepreneur, whether it's in the nonprofit or for-profit space. It's very similar in nature. I know each one has their differences, but from the survivability perspective of being able to build and maintain a successful organization, it's very important. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Landmark Life Coaching's vision is to be the nation's premier coaching partner for inspiring and empowering those in transition. They partner with courageous groundbreakers and transitioning veterans to create fulfilling and empowering futures that they desire. They have partnered with various entrepreneurs and transitioning veterans to leverage their core strengths and implement the framework for the future they always dreamed of. Could you or anyone you know benefit from a success partner to bring clarity to your future or their future? If so, please check out landmarklifecoaching.com for more information and charliemikepodcast.com for the Charlie Mike Podcast, showcasing the successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Okay, we are back with Duane France, talking about the amazing entrepreneurial path that he has been on. Duane has worked in the nonprofit sector from a mental health perspective for veterans. He has amazing background from when he was in the military and some amazing core strengths and skills that he's been able to bring over to the nonprofit area to really make a huge impact on veterans. So, Duane, let me ask you, we're going to go into the In the Zone segment here. Let me ask you, what was the point where you knew doing entrepreneurial work was meant for you?
Well, I think that it was always the problem-solving thing. That's one thing I enjoyed in my career in the Army, is there was always a problem to solve, and always, something. Maybe something was always broken, and something always needed to be fixed. But it was something that was always unique, and it was an ever-changing kind of thing. So then, when I got out and I started working with the first organization, I kind of always knew that I was somebody that was able to come in and look at, what's the situation, how can we improve it, how can we sustain the strengths while minimizing the weaknesses, and that's what I did really in the first. And then when I came into the clinical mental health counseling agency, I just saw some gaps that were in veteran mental health and some things that couldn't be covered. So we decided to start a nonprofit to kind of cover those things.
Yeah, that's great, because there are, as many nonprofits that are out there, and even with what the government can provide and for-profit organizations that are supporting veterans, there's always those gaps. And I think it's key from an entrepreneurial perspective is as many of those gaps that can be identified and solutions put in place for them, the better, because it's only going to make the resources that much more robust for veterans that have transitioned or are looking to transition. So are there any tools or resources that you've used in your entrepreneurial successes that you think would be of interest to our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is getting out and reestablishing that network. We talk about it a lot, networking and what is it like, and people don't know. When I was in the military, I didn't have to do that, but and I tell people you kind of did, right? Everybody knew the supply sergeant, everybody knew the DFAC guy, right? You always, kind of knew people in adjacent units or somebody on the other side of the base who could, just help you out and help you make the mission, make the mission go smoother. But a lot of people, again, they don't know how to translate that kind of method of networking. Hey, I know a guy over in that unit, to the professional networking side. And that's where LinkedIn was really a big resource, and it's really it's pushed a lot, I think, in a lot of the transitioning programs. But it's one of the social networking sites where, as opposed to say Facebook or Twitter, but the people are going on LinkedIn to actually improve themselves or to actually try to make things better. They want to improve. They want to learn, which is why when I first started writing and writing for veterans and talking about veteran mental health, particularly, is when I started out on LinkedIn, because they say go where your clients are, and there's a large amount of veterans on LinkedIn, and my focus, especially with veterans transition, is saying, we can talk a lot about a lot of different things, but we don't seem to be talking about the importance of mental health and mental wellness in a veteran's transition. So I think LinkedIn is a great tool.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. In fact, it's one of the best ones that I've used. One of the other ones that's actually military focused is Rally Point. That has a lot of military. It's only military specific people on there, and the profile set up a little different, where you actually put what your military experience, background, and all that is, and you can connect with people with those similar backgrounds, or that were assigned in similar places or the same place that you were. And so I would recommend that as well for networking. And you can never really replace the in-person networking events. I know, there's a lot of people, kind of question, they're like on one side of the fence or the other of whether the value is there. And, myself, I know it's hard for me with my schedule to get out to as many in-person networking events, but I tell you, it's critical because the face-to-face just makes a huge difference in the lasting relationship if it's somebody that you haven't met before and you can really get to know them through that.
Well, absolutely, and the big thing is that you can use a network not for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And this was something that I saw very much when I was at my first program. Was that I needed to start establishing a network in my city to be able to help the veterans that were in the residential program. They don't know how to network, and so if I call up Jerry at the Workforce Center and say, "Hey Jerry, I've got Mr. So and so here who wants to meet with you to talk about getting a job," Jerry and I have a relationship. We established a relationship. And I'm sort of modeling this for this veteran. Hey, this is what you have to do. Go see Jerry, and Jerry will take care of you. And then he sees Jerry. Oh, yeah, I saw, Duane told me you were coming by. And they see how that networking piece actually works. And so that's where I saw a big thing about helping veterans learn how to network by modeling what effective networking can be. And using that network to support others rather than, like me trying to get ahead of myself or something. Yeah,
no, that's a great point. Having an external focus versus internal when you network is an absolute key point, because the more you give, the more you're actually going to get back in many ways. It's amazing how that works. If you are genuinely interested and focused on the other side in the conversation, your connection is going to be better, and people are actually going to notice that and be willing to just voluntarily do things for you because they see you as a contributor and as somebody who's looking outward instead of just inward. And I also like the point you made that you actually established a network, right? So if you're in an area or you're in a discipline or whatever, and it's like, I just don't know who to talk to or who the network is, take that leadership trait that you built in the military and build that network, because there may not be one in that discipline, that area that you're looking, and you can be that leading expert in that to help pull the resources together and connect those dots. Because I know with a lot of what I do, I find myself a lot of times just kind of connecting the dots for people. It's like, you'd be talking to them and it's like, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. Let me make that introduction for you. And it's funny because that introduction is like you just handed that person a gold bar. They're just like, wow, this is amazing. I wouldn't have been able to make this connection, as easily or if at all, to know who to talk to. And so I think that's key to be able to establish a network, be external facing, be more about the giving versus figuring out what you can get, and you will get what you need in time just by taking that approach.
Sure, and then you also figure out what opportunities are there, because when when you're trying to connect with a certain resource, for example, and it's not there, that also gives you the idea, say, hey, there's an opportunity here for me to step out, which is really what happened with me is when I was at the previous organization, I was able to connect veterans to employment. I was able to get them, dress for success, or, all these different things. We can get them connected to organizations, help them with housing and, all this kind of stuff. But what I couldn't do was get them connected with somebody that could help them with just mental health, with their outlook. For a lot of these veterans who were, struggling with in addiction, we did have we had a group of residents that were working through an addiction program, and they had resources. But veterans who were in the homeless program, I think we had something like 14 or 15 any one time. That if they couldn't look somebody in the eye or, pick their head up from the ground or something, it wasn't sustainable. And so me and some of the other people with the organization there were kept looking around, trying to just find mental health counselors that could help these veterans. Of course, the VA is there, but there's the wait list and it's the frequency, and of course the VA focuses on some very the high level cases, high need cases. But just guys that just need to sit down and talk it out and figure things out and get a greater awareness. It just wasn't there, so that when I moved and I started working as a clinical mental health counselor, I still saw that need, and that gave me the opportunity to kind of build that need in our city.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, it's typical path of an entrepreneur, identifying that need and providing a solution to fulfill it. So that's a great example from a nonprofit's perspective. Is, you know, you just got to go out there and find those needs and figure out how to fill them for people. And so that is very valuable to any space that you're in. So, all right. So this has been an amazing conversation here. And as we're running out of time, I'd like to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you or learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah. So, kind of a big guy, and I got a big presence on the internet, I guess. It's not like I'm trying to hide, but I am on LinkedIn. You'd have to spell my name the correct way, Duane, and not the incorrect way. Or maybe you have the correct way, and I've been spelling it wrong for many years.
Right.
But so you can find me on LinkedIn by searching Duane France. As you mentioned, outside the counseling work that I do write for a wider audience of veterans and their families and those that support veterans. I thought that I'd run out of stuff to say a long time ago, but it hasn't seemed to happen yet. But you can find that at www.veteranmentalhealth.com. And pretty much I am on Twitter, the Counseling Vet, and then the veteranmentalhealth.com. We have presence on Facebook as well. For the nonprofit side and the for-profit side, my agencies, they're sort of co-located on our agency website, Family Care Center at fccsprings.com. So and I definitely welcome any other mental health professionals or people that are just, hey, how are you doing and what are you doing? I like to spend time to kind of help other mental health professionals say, this is how we're, through grant-based services and through contracts and through sponsorships, how we're trying to bridge this gap for veteran mental health.
Awesome. That's a lot of good information, and there are some amazing resources that you have out there as well. I certainly highly recommend anybody to check out his website and read these articles on LinkedIn, on the website, whichever resource you prefer. Great information, very valuable. So thank you again for being on the show, and most importantly, thank you for your service to our country.
Yeah, thanks you, Duane. I appreciate it.
Remember, loyal listeners, we are the home of the free, because of the brave.
Thank you for tuning in to Charlie Mike Podcast with Duane Perro. Our objective is to bring successful veteranpreneurs to help inspire and provide insight into what helped them become successful, with the hopes you can take away various strategies you can implement in your entrepreneurial journey. Visit us on iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and let us know what you thought of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hoorah!